From our studio in Seoul, this is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. The nation's top office is working to turn the promises made by the two Koreas in their summits into reality. Today, Cheongwade announced what it plans to do on that front in the near future. Shin Se-min starts us off.
The committee tasked with carrying out the agreements reached by the two Koreas in Panmunjom and in Pyeongyang have one goal in mind: raising inter-Korean relations to the next level. One major development from the committee is the start next month of joint inspections of cross-border railways as part of efforts to reconnect them. The presidential spokesperson said in a press briefing Friday that to break ground on inter-Korean railways and roads by year's end, as stipulated in the Pyeongyang Joint Declaration, the two sides would have to start doing field inspections next month. And to do that, he added, the two Koreas have agreed to discuss the matter with UN Command and the combined forces. The railroads to be inspected are the ones running through the western and eastern sides of the border, called the Seoul and Donghae lines. The presidential spokesperson added that the committee has agreed to start talking with the International Olympic Committee about a joint bid by the two Koreas to host the Summer Games in 2032 and possibly competing together in the 2020 Games in Tokyo, starting at the qualifying rounds. The committee will also work to fulfill another promise made in Pyeongyang to display North Korean cultural assets in an exhibition in the South later this year to mark 1,100 years since the establishment of the Goryeo dynasty. The discussions are so comprehensive, the presidential office says, to help link the outcome of the inter-Korean summits to the denuclearization talks. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The two Koreas are holding a joint event next week in Pyeongyang to celebrate the 11th anniversary of their 2007 summit agreement, dubbed the October 4th Declaration. The decision or the agreement was reached by Seoul and Pyeongyang's heads of the Inter-Korean Liaison Office. They met for 2 hours at the facility located in the Kaesong Industrial Complex north of the border. The celebration is to be held for 3 days from October 4th. South Korea will be sending a 150-member delegation. Other details will be ironed out through the Joint Liaison Office. 64 sets of South Korean soldiers' remains are returning to their homeland. The U.S. Defense POW MIA accounting agency handed over the remains of the fallen heroes to South Korean representatives at the send-off ceremony on Thursday local time in Hawaii. The remains were found during the joint discovery operation in North Korea from 1996 to 2005. They were identified as South Korean nationals through a joint forensic review. According to the DPAA, this is the largest transfer of war remains between the allies. The repatriation ceremony is set to take place at Seoul Air Base on October 1st, which will mark the nation's 70th Armed Forces Day. UN Security Council members met to discuss the positive developments in negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington. There was tension between the U.S. and North Korea's two allies. China and Russia believe there should be changes to sanctions on the regime. For details, let's turn to our Oh Jung-hee.
The 15 member nations of the UN Security Council gathered Thursday on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly to discuss North Korea. The meeting came after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accepted North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's invitation to Pyongyang, and after President Trump revealed that he received another letter from Kim. Against that backdrop, it was a standoff between the U.S. and North Korea's neighbors, China and Russia, over sanctions. Secretary Pompeo said they'll have to stay in place until North Korea denuclearizes, and he credited the sanctions for the progress made up till now.
We must not forget what's brought us this far, the historic international pressure campaign that this Council has made possible through the sanctions that it imposed. Enforcement of UN Security Council sanctions must continue vigorously and without fail until we realize the fully, final, verified denuclearization.
China and Russia, on the other hand, said the sanctions need to be eased. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi pointed out that one of the Security Council provisions allows sanctions to be modified if Pyongyang is found to be complying with them.
Given the positive developments, China believes that the Security Council needs to consider invoking in due course this provision to encourage North Korea and other relevant parties to move denuclearization further ahead.
And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said sanctions can't become a, quote, instrument of collective punishment.
I would just like to remind you that any negotiations are a two-way street. North Korea's actions towards gradual disarmament should be followed by easing of sanctions. There should be reaction towards every action.
North Korea promised it'll invite international experts when it dismantles its missile engine test site and hinted it could get rid of its key nuclear complex once the U.S. takes corresponding measures. But differences remain between the U.S. and the two allies of the North over what comes next. Washington in favor of dialogue and sanctions, and Beijing and Moscow calling for rewards as the process goes forward. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea's foreign ministry has been extra busy this year at the UN General Assembly in New York. Ri Yong-ho met with his American counterpart on Wednesday. Mike Pompeo accepted North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's invitation for a fourth visit to Pyongyang. Ri also sat down with top diplomats from Japan, China, and Russia, countries highly relevant to the Korean peninsula. It is very rare for Pyongyang's officials to hold meetings with other countries' foreign ministers on the sidelines of the General Assembly. Watchers say its increased dialogue with neighboring nations reflects the recent positive developments on the Korean peninsula achieved through the regime's series of summits with Seoul and Washington. Ri Yong-ho is set to deliver his keynote speech on Saturday. Going back to last week's Inter-Korean summit, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un announced some concrete denuclearization measures, including a conditional shutdown of the regime's main nuclear complex. One expert who is very familiar with the North's nuclear programs had some different views on what can be done with such facilities. Park Hee-jun shares with us his remarks.
Dr. Siegfried Hecker, an American nuclear scientist, says North Korea's conditional shutdown of its Yeongbyeon nuclear complex would be a very positive sign that demonstrates its willingness to denuclearize. Hecker made the remarks on Thursday during a special lecture hosted by the Yonsei Institute for North Korean Studies. He's visited the complex 4 times, and from what he's seen firsthand, it's functional with some relatively new facilities, which makes it quite a big concession.
If North Korea actually follows through with shutting down, and they said dismantle, that's a very big deal. That would be a huge step of showing that North Korea is actually serious about rolling back its nuclear program.
But he has doubts on whether North Korea will ever give it up. Hecker notes how the complex was an enormous investment for the regime, both in terms of money and pride. Instead, he suggests allowing the North to maintain it partially and convert it from military use to civilian purposes and space programs.
In my opinion, is the risk of letting them keep some of the civilian nuclear facility is worth the potential benefit by working jointly with them in those facilities, and it would be the best chance in terms of eventual verifications.
According to Hecker's 10-year framework, that needs to be achieved through a long process of negotiations that encourages North Korea to make such concrete steps. Under the phased approach, North Korea will be convinced to demilitarize its Yeongbyeon complex. And ultimately, Hecker says that will turn nuclear weapons from a treasured sword to an unnecessary burden that North Korea can let go. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Lately, consumers here in the nation appear more willing to reach into their wallets than in recent months. A new report shows while unemployment remains a pressing issue, many Koreans believe the economy is on a path to recovery. Kim Ji-yeon has the full story.
South Korea's consumer sentiment rebounded for the first time in 4 months in September. Data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday shows its composite consumer sentiment index rose 2.5 points to 101.7, recovering from a dip last month when it fell below the 100 level, mainly due to grim unemployment figures released earlier this year. A reading above 100 means there are more optimists than pessimists about the economy. An official from the central bank attributed the rise to robust exports, an upbeat stock market, and a slowdown in price increases of food and other livelihood expenses. The official added that data suggests consumers think the worst is over, as the government has put forth measures to boost the job market and stabilize prices. The same data shows consumer sentiment on housing prices has climbed by 10 points to 119 this month, a near three-year high. It cited rises in real estate prices in Seoul as well as prices of jeonse, a unique long-term rent in Korea in the form of a lump sum deposit, as the main reasons. It comes after the government unveiled measures this month on curbing speculative housing practices by levying heftier taxes on multiple homeowners and limiting the amount they can borrow from banks. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea released its data on exports and imports for August. It shows the volume of exports hitting the highest level in 11 months. But as oil prices shot up rapidly, the country's terms of trade deteriorated. Kim Hye-sung help us look beyond the digits.
Korea's export volume index for August hit 158.31, the highest figure since September 2017. The Bank of Korea says the index, which measures changes in export volume, went up over 11% on year last month thanks to strong semiconductor exports. Exports of precision equipment, which includes semiconductors, went up near 40% on year. Electronic devices, which include DRAM chips, rose 20%. Exports of autos narrowed down losses, with auto parts exports seeing a positive and transport equipment seeing a 1% growth in exports last month. The import volume index, on the other hand, dropped 4% on year in August, recording the lowest figure in 6 months. The central bank attributed the fall to a decrease in primary metal imports as prices of metal imports from China rose on growing environmental regulations in the country. But overall, the terms of trade, which measure the ratio between the average price of exports to the average price of imports, was down 9%, recording 93.9 after falling for a 9th straight month. A figure below 100 means import prices are higher than export prices. Prices of exports went up 3.6%, but import prices went up 14%, mainly on rising oil prices. Dubai crude, Korea's benchmark oil price, went up more than 50% on year, hitting an average of $73 a barrel last month. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States signed the revised bilateral free trade agreement earlier this week in New York. So how will the latest move impact the local economy? Our Ko Ryun-hee turned to some experts for their take on the matter.
After months of deliberation, South Korea and the U.S. officially signed their revised free trade agreement earlier this week in New York. Under the revised deal, the U.S. is to continue levying 25% tariffs on imports of Korean pickup trucks for another 20 years until 2041. The agreement also stipulates that 50,000 U.S. auto imports per year can be shipped into Korea without meeting Korea's safety standards. South Korea will also consider simplifying the sales environment for U.S. automobiles shipped from 2021 to 2025 by taking into account U.S. emission standards.
The U.S. auto industry is a highly protected industry, and letting them continue levying 25% tariffs is only promoting the country's trade protectionism, which is against the spirit of free trade agreements.
Another key revision is related to changes in the investor-state dispute settlement system. This is a system that allows those investing in a foreign country to sue the country for less discriminatory practices. The changes will prevent the overuse of lawsuits and possibly protect the South Korean government's right to implement fair policies. This comes after some investors abused the system in the past in order to get state compensation, as seen in the case of American private equity fund Lone Star. An expert at the Korea International Trade Association welcomed the successful conclusion of negotiations because the deal did not bring changes to the agricultural industry.
From the start, Korea has said the country's agricultural sector is off limits. Luckily, it seems like South Korea has successfully persuaded the U.S. Otherwise, the negotiation process between the two countries would have taken longer.
Korea's Trade Ministry says it plans to get the revised FTA deal ratified by the National Assembly as soon as possible, but the process may take longer as the government has not specified a timeline. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's birth rate fell in July while the sizzling summer conditions led to more deaths. Also, the number of single-member households steadily went up as of 2017. Yoon Jung-min helped us break down the data by Statistics Korea.
South Korea's birth rate continued to fall in July, while the number of deaths increased due to harsh weather affecting older people. According to data by Statistics Korea on Friday, the number of births declined by 2,400 to just 27,000 last month, down 8.2% on year. The monthly figures have been in constant decline since December 2015. On the other hand, the number of deaths during the same period went up 7.2% on year to 23,800, the highest figure since 1983. The statistics agency attributed the rise to the extreme temperatures in July causing more deaths among the elderly. According to other data by the statistics agency released on the same day, the country saw the number of single-member households reach 5.62 million last year, 2.5 times higher than the figure in 2000. The agency said the increase in the number of one-person households is because more people choose to stay single or get divorced. Two-person households accounted for 26.7% of the total number of households, followed by three-member households with 21.2%. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The nation's military has formed its first-ever drone combat unit using technology developed as part of the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. An inaugural ceremony was held this morning for that unit at the headquarters of the 3rd ROK Army located in Yongin, Gyeonggi-do Province. The drone battalion will start with about 80 members, but the goal is to expand it gradually until the year 2021, when every military unit in the nation will have a drone combat team. The unit has several kinds of drones, including artillery position reconnaissance drones, portable recon drones, and attack drones. Its commander, Colonel Kim Yong-gyun, said the unit will help lead the Moon administration's ongoing military reforms aimed at making the nation's armed forces stronger and more efficient. Foreign nationals seeking employment opportunities in Korea will soon have an easier time looking for work, and local businesses will have a bigger talent pool. The Justice Ministry made a new point system for job seeker visas that'll take effect next month. Lee Min-sun explains how it works.
In October, the Ministry of Justice will implement a new visa application system for foreign job seekers based on points. The visa gives foreigners 1 year to look for jobs, including professor, foreign language instructor, researcher, technician, and artist. Previously, an applicant had to have worked at a top global company or graduated from a highly regarded university abroad or a Korean one. But the new point system offers other ways to qualify. Applicants get up to 50 points based on their age and education, and up to 130 points from their work experience, job training, and Korean language skills. To get the visa, you need at least 20 points from the basic criteria and a total score of at least 60. Both systems will be used for the rest of this year, and from January, just the points. The new system is expected to broaden the pool of foreign job seekers, which will help small and mid-sized companies hire more professionals and cut down on the illegal employment of foreign citizens. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Some welcome news for shopping enthusiasts. The Korean government announced new plans to enable passengers to shop at duty-free stores at arrival terminals from as early as June next year. Kim Mo-gyun updates us on the changes.
After 15 years of negotiations, the South Korean government has finally allowed duty-free shops to be installed at arrival terminals at Incheon Airport. With the latest decision, passengers taking international flights will now be able to shop for duty-free items at the airport on arrival in Korea, rather than having to shop before departure and carry the items with them throughout their journey. The nation's finance minister said that the move will also give a boost to domestic consumption as well as create more jobs.
We seek to create more jobs by creating a new market for new demand.
To prevent controversy from large conglomerates benefiting from the decision, only small and medium-sized firms will be allowed to operate in the new duty-free area. Cigarettes, fruits, and processed livestock products will not be sold. The duty-free shops will be introduced at Incheon Airport as early as June next year and will gradually be rolled out at other airports around the country. As of today, some 149 airports in 73 countries around the world have duty-free shops in the arrival section of the airport. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
Staying with the topic of shopping, Black Friday in the United States, Singles Day in China, and here in the nation we have Korea Sale Festa, the country's biggest shopping extravaganza, kicked off today. Kim Da-mi zooms in on what this year's edition has to offer.
South Korea's global shopping tourism festival, Korea Sale Festa, is once again drawing shoppers with a variety of promotions, entertainment, and cultural events. A total of 231 companies are taking part this year, looking to encourage consumption. Department stores and major retail outlets are offering hefty discounts on fashion items, cosmetics, and luxury goods, knocking up to 80% off some price tags. And this year, about 300 traditional markets nationwide are holding their own unique festivals and events. Customers who spend more than 50,000 won, or around $50, get a $5 onnuri gift certificate, which can be used at all local traditional markets. For international shoppers, the so-called Cyber Hot Days aim to boost online shopping with different themes each day from October 1st to 4th. The massive shopping campaign overlaps with China's two national holidays for the Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day, lasting until October 7th, and it's the time of the year when the highest number of Chinese tourists visit Korea. Myeongdong, the main shopping district in the heart of Seoul, will welcome Chinese shoppers with Chinese-speaking shop assistants and signs in Chinese advertising the latest beauty products.
My sister and I came to the duty-free shops where lots of sales are going on. We've bought lots of items and it's been fun shopping around.
Despite a lower budget and smaller scale, 2018 Korea Sale Festa aims to attract shoppers all around the world and help revitalize the sluggish domestic economy. Local and international shoppers can look forward to some deals and discounts for 10 days until October 7th. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
A major 7.7 magnitude quake struck off the Indonesian island of Sulawesi on Friday. The U.S. Geological Survey says the quake hit central Sulawesi Island at a depth of about 10 kilometers, we'll have more updates on this story in our later newscast. Time for us to turn to our Michelle Bag at the Weather Center for the latest updates. Michelle, the leaves have turned a little crimson on the Seoraksan Mountain in Gangwon Province, I believe.
Yes, Daniel, but this year's fall foliage is delayed 1 to 2 days in the central region and 3 to 4 days over in the south. Now, by the third week of October, most of the leaves should have started turning, and from that point and on, it takes about 2 weeks for the foliage to reach its peak. So until then, let's enjoy this green. Now, on Saturday, we'll have more sunshine in the capital, but for the southern regions, we'll continue to get light showers. With brighter skies in Seoul tomorrow, it will be warmer than today, while Beijing and Tokyo can expect a cooler afternoon. Forecast for tomorrow morning in Seoul and across the whole country is mostly cloudy, and temperatures are mostly down into the mid-teens. And there is a jump of roughly 10 degrees into the day, Seoul reaching up to 26 degrees Celsius, and lower where it's raining. And autumn rain is expected to continue until Sunday for some parts, but the weather will mostly be pleasant. And starting next week, the temperatures will plunge even more. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could pack into tonight's edition of News Center. Thank you for staying with us. Have an incredible weekend.